Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 11 of Walking Down the Warwick Road. As always, I'm Tim, joined by my co-host Pete. Pete, how are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks, Tim. Caught somewhere between missing my footy and getting ready for Christmas.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, busy time of year for everybody, and of course, as we know, a couple of United games that have been postponed over the last couple of days. Unfortunately, due to COVID, but have no fear. Pete and I are here to teleport you back to a very, very memorable season for United fans. A tremendous, tremendous team that we're going to look at today. A tremendous season. One I think that we've done shows in the past in the 70s, and we've covered United all the way back to the 50s. But this is a season I think that most United fans, young and old, will be able to really remember and have some fond memories of. So get your comments, and if you're watching the podcast, let us know your memories. Let us know on Twitter your memories of the season. We'll have some video clips, and hopefully this is a nice walk down memory lane for everybody. We are hoping to be joined by a guest today. We're hoping to be joined by Tom from the 100% United podcast, who's just having some technical difficulties at the moment. So we do hope that Tom will be able to join us. But Pete, why don't we get into it? So, like I said off the top, a memorable season. We've looked at some seasons in the past. We looked at the 2002-2003 season, where maybe the season before United had come up just a little bit short of winning anything or winning what they wanted to win that season. But you look at what coming into this season, the 07-08 season, what United had done the season before, league winners, FA Cup finalists where they lost out to Chelsea, and then going out in the semifinals to AC Milan that season. What, in terms of coming into this season, the 07-08 season, take us, where was United coming from? Were they certainly coming from a position of strength into this season?
They were, because the season before in 06-07, Fergie had pulled one of his master strokes and was creating his certainly third great team, if not fourth, because the power had shifted to London with Wenger making Arsenal into a real force in the early noughties, but also Mourinho had joined Chelsea. And and so the last three titles, 04, 05, 06, 04, 05, 06, had gone to Arsenal and two to Chelsea. Chelsea had never won the league in 50 years, and they'd only won it once ever from being founded when 1905, then they won it in 1955. Mourinho comes and win it twice in 2 years. So the shift of power in football in Britain or in England had moved from the northwest to London, it seemed. And it was crucial that Fergie kind of broke that before it became a monopoly. And he'd done it in 06-07 with some astute signings, mainly Michael Carrick, I'd say. But he was also building now a team round the young but maturing Rooney and Ronaldo. He'd sacrificed Ruud van Nistelrooy to build his next team. And it paid dividends with the league in 07. We ran out of energy in the cup final and the semi-final of the European Cup. But we went into 07-08 really excited because added onto that team, he'd bought a few good players who you might be covering shortly.
Yes, and we'll take a look at those players now. So we'll look at the key ins coming into this season, Pete, and we can see there. You talked about the attacking prowess that we already had in terms of Rooney and Ronaldo, and a bit of a sort of style or formation change in terms of how Sir Alex was going to set up. And when you talked about building this great team, he brought in you can see Carlos Tevez on the right there from West Ham. So just a very, and we'll see as the season goes on, a very prominent attack in terms of Tevez, Rooney, Ronaldo, sort of leading that charge. Anderson next to Fergie there on the right hand side, Brazilian midfielder, and he would play his part certainly in the 07-08 season. He was terrific. The second Canadian to line up for United, of course, I had to sneak that one in there, didn't I? Owen Hargreaves from Calgary. Yes, I know he played for England, but born and raised in Calgary, Alberta. brought in from Bayern Munich. Nani, of course, on the left, and Tomasz Kuszek stood next to Fergie there in the back. So, I mean, you talk about, we'll look at the outs here while we're talking about the ins, but, Alan Smith, and these are notables. Obviously, we know more players came in and left. We're just looking at the notable ins and outs. Of course, the legend Ole Gunnar Solskjaer leaving the club. Gabriel Heinze leaving as well, and Alan Smith. So when you look at, in terms of what was brought in versus what went out, the ins heavily favor. The squad was an already strong squad was strengthened.
Definitely, and that those new additions had cost 50 million. It's amazing how quickly time moves on, or money moves on, because 50 million sounds nothing then, but it was a big outlay in 07. Again, the board, and I'm not here to defend the Glazers, but I always like to be dealing facts sometimes rather than just emotion. But they backed the manager with money. No signings at the time. We can sometimes look back and judge those players by what we knew of their careers now, time's gone. And it was mixed with some of that because of injuries to Hargreaves in the end. And Anderson didn't quite live up to his early billing. But they were very exciting signings, Tim. Particularly Tevez, I think, because he'd burst onto the English scene and scored key goals against United. Hargreaves, very good buy. Of course, at this stage, there was a crucial transformation going on, not just across the team, but we needed to find a replacement for Roy Keane. We needed that captain on the field and that midfield strength, which we'd had before that with Keane, with Brian Robson, with Bobby Charlton. And all what we had now was Scholesy and a couple of others. But we tried Smith and that didn't work. And hopefully Owen Hargreaves and Carrick and Scholesy were going to be the midfield engine.
Yeah, and you speaking of midfield engine, you can see, like you talked on, the likes of Carrick, Darren Fletcher started to come into his own, Scholesy, Hargreaves. Like I said, I thought Anderson was terrific that season in terms of, when his coming in. It's always a tough adjustment to come into the Premier League, I find, certainly for South American players. But, I thought he did incredibly well. But you could just see it starting to turn over with that midfield and talking about building that great team. And he was starting to round it out. And then the likes of, like we said, across the top with Carlos Tevez, with Rooney and Ronaldo spearheading your attack. Luis Saha as well, a player that Wayne Rooney has spoken fondly of, that he, one of his favorite strike partners. And then across the back, of course, the indomitable force of Vidic and Rio Ferdinand. I mean, one of the best center back pairings that this club has ever seen. So really terrific. Of course, Patrice Evra would play his part. Wes Brown would contribute to the goal in the final. You just started to see this squad come together, didn't you, Pete? As we look at the key contributors, and we'll touch on it when we look at how the league started. But they got off to a bit of a slow start. But then once they picked up steam, it was just they just seemed to steamroll their way through the season.
Yeah, definitely. And it's funny, they were a very attacking side and a very attractive side through that season. And the next year went on to conquer the world, if you will. But all good sides, certainly title-winning sides and Cup Champions League winning sides, are built on a rock of a defence. We'd gone 6 years after the 99 European Cup with not really a top goalkeeper. Between Schmeichel going in 99 and Edwin van der Sar coming in 05, we tried. We kissed a few frogs that didn't turn into princes in terms of goalkeepers, I felt. But Van der Sar was top class, even at the advanced age he came in at. And with him and Evra and Vidic and Ferdinand, that was 4 out of 5 at the back that were absolute rocks and would become legends for the club.
It was always going to be tough to replace Massimo Taibbi, but certainly Van der Sar was able to fill that void. And he was terrific, like you said, commanding, terrific shot stopper and good distribution. Really, someone who led from the back, didn't he, with lots of experience. Right. Well, we will start. We'll start with we'll start with the Premier League, and we've broken the season down into 3 sections, but we will talk about a patch of games at the end of the slide, sort of that Pete has certainly identified as a patch of games where we really took off. But the first spell we'll look at is from August 12th to November 25th. And Pete, start the season, United got off to a bit of a slow start, didn't they? They did go ahead and win the Community Shield to start the season, proudly hoisting the Community Shield there at Wembley. But so they win that game against Chelsea, and then they draw Reading 0-0 on the 12th, and then August 15th they draw Portsmouth, and then they lose to Manchester City. Rooney gets injured in that first or second game of the season. He fractured his foot, so he'd be missing for a month after that. And then Ronaldo saw red against Portsmouth. So, there's two of your key attacking components that are missing. And then after that, sort of lost to City, they go 4 wins on the bounce, 3 wins in the Premier League on the bounce, winning 1-0 in their next 3 games to sort of stabilize themselves. But certainly, I guess you call it maybe a bit of a rocky start to the season, wasn't it?
Yeah, and on paper it looked fine, like you say, Reading, Portsmouth, and City, and we ended up with 2 points out of 9, and it can quickly become a crisis at Old Trafford, even then, let alone now. But what we must point out, I feel at this stage, because sometimes it's easy to forget, Manchester City's oil money pipeline hasn't started to come through at this stage. So it would be another year before City fans were running around the forecourt of the Etihad with tea towels on their head. So Manchester City beating us was, they just didn't do it in those days. But yeah, they beat us at the Etihad. So first 3 games, 2 draws and a defeat. And but I don't think Fergie panicked. He realised that it was 2 of his best lads, Rooney and Ronaldo, were missing. But then it really did. It picked up in wins, but I think in the first 11 games, I'm right in saying there was only once when we scored more than 1 goal, and we won a lot by 0 once we picked up after those first 3 games. So we started winning, but the tap wasn't turned on for goals,
Well, we talked about the games that we won 1-0. Let's show a clip at Goodison Park here of Nemanja Vidic popping up in the 83rd minute.
Well, and he's more than useful in the air. But it's Vidic. Oh, what a belter of a header. Manchester United break the deadlock, and it was a thumping header. So there's Nemanja Vidic popping up at Goodison Park, and really, at that stage of the season, Pete, it's really just about getting, like we touched on the players missing and how things did look good on paper. It's just about stabilizing yourself and grinding out the results at that stage until you really kick into high gear. And Nemanja Vidic popping up there with a goal. And then if we look at home, September 23rd, Pete, we had a big game with Chelsea, one of our London rivals, coming to Old Trafford. And in the context of how this season would go, when you look back on it, it was certainly an even bigger game. And it was also the first goal of the season for one of United's new signings.
Yes, it was. What we must frame this game with Chelsea, it was always going to be a big game. Arsenal games versus United.
Here.
Chelsea.
Bear with me.
Sorry. Okay. Do you want me to carry on talking? I'll carry on talking on the assumption that somebody can hear me. But United versus Arsenal, United Chelsea, were going to be big games because they've been the champions in the previous 3 years, as I said. But just before we came to play Chelsea on the 23rd of September, Mourinho had been sacked by Chelsea. So he'd won 2 titles, an FA Cup and at least a couple of League Cups in his short time there. And the next thing, he'd gone. And the word is that Abramovich wanted to bring in, or did bring in, Avram Grant as technical director of football. And the power struggle ensued very quickly, and Mourinho lost out. So it was Avram Grant that brought Chelsea to Old Trafford that day, and it's a bit of a seismic shock around the football world that Mourinho had gone. Hello, Tim. Hello, Tim. I will assume that we're still broadcasting. So Chelsea came to Old Trafford. United beat them comfortably 2-0 in this run where they were just eking out games. Alex Ferguson was very good at that. Alex Ferguson was excellent, that even after a bit of a poor start, he knew how to stabilise things by just tightening up the defence and making sure that we eked out victories. And he managed to do that for about 7 or 8 games.
It was, as I was saying, Pete, it was the Chelsea game was the first United goal for one of our new signings.
Brown. Oh, great header. Back to Giggs. Good ball in. It's in! Fantastic. Tevez. His first goal for Manchester United comes right at the end of the first half. Tevez in front of the Stretford end. United ahead. United 1, Chelsea 0.
Well, it's a great little ball in from Ryan Giggs, the outside of his left foot. When it comes back to him, he's not offside. The outside of his left foot, he does this in. And Tevez is there, and what a great touch.
So Carlos Tevez, my apologies, folks. My internet dropped. That's why I left. So I frantically had to get reconnected. But Carlos Tevez popping up, and we'll see a few more clips of him through the season, popping up with a timely goal. United would go on to win that game 2-0. And Pete, like you said, Fergie just had this knack of picking them up. No Ronaldo, no Rooney, no problem. So massive win.
You know, Carlos Tevez that season would not only score quite a number of goals, a quantity of goals, he would score some critically important goals at key times in matches or in the season. Another thing we should just point out there, probably anybody that watches that clip, you see the way Giggs crossed that ball out on the right, but he hits it with his left foot and swerves it out with just the merest back lift that you would imagine. Absolute football gold, that. Absolutely superb. He still had a bag of tricks, Giggs, at that stage. He still had all his trickery. But Tim, I did rightly or wrongly, I did carry on talking while your internet dropped. So I don't know if people caught. But just to that game when we played Chelsea, only about 6 or 7 or 8 games in, Mourinho had been sacked on the eve of it. It was Avram Grant that came to Old Trafford as manager of Chelsea. And that shocked the football world that had happened because Mourinho had won, let's say, 2 titles in 3 years, an FA Cup and at least 2 League Cups. So Chelsea wobbled a bit at the time, but United stayed focused. Fergie got them back on track.
He did indeed, and then from there, then they would go on to beat Birmingham, beat back-to-back games where they scored 4 goals against Villa and Wigan and Middlesbrough. So 3 games in the league there where they were able to go on a run of scoring 12 goals. And then that sort of set us up for United starting to find some form. Rooney was back by that time, and United headed to Arsenal, to the Emirates, and a 1-1 poised, it looked like, for a draw. And then Ronaldo popped up with this one.
Anticipating well. Great run by Evra for Manchester United, and Ronaldo, with 9 minutes to go, has put Manchester United back in front.
I warned you about Evra. I warned about Abu coming off, and maybe he would just do something, and my goodness, hasn't he just?
I remember it well. Hello, Tim. Okay, I'll carry on talking as well. First of all, it's a little bit, maybe sound a little bit shallow, but that all black kit that season, away kit, I thought it was superb. United looked majestic in it and got some very important victory. Well, a draw there at Arsenal, it would end up a victory at Liverpool a few weeks later. They just looked superb in that kit. But as Tim said, the goals started coming online after that run of just winning by the odd goal up to around about October. I think we scored 4 in 5 out of 6 games. If that doesn't sound too complicated, in 5 of 6 games we scored 4. And that's in the league and the Champions League. So it was the additions that had come into the team, and Rooney and Ronaldo fit again and not suspended. The goals were flowing in that autumn of 2007.
Indeed. And at the end of that stretch, the Arsenal game, November 3rd, Pete touched on the goal starting to flow. So at the end of the stretch, United would end up sitting in 3rd place, 4 points behind Arsenal. Just spoke to how, tremendously competitive the league was at that time. Arsenal sitting in 34 points, 4 points ahead of us. So, the bit of the slow start, the little wobble that we had at the beginning, maybe just keeping us behind, but we were really starting to hit form, and then heading into the autumn, into the winter, at the end of this stretch, and some key games in this stretch. Pete, was there particular games when you were looking back on this season that sort of you look back on and thought that was a big one?
Well, in that period you're referring to on the chart there, from November to Feb, really key games. We mustn't forget Liverpool as much as we'd like to. Liverpool would again come in with what would prove to be another false dawn in terms of trying to win the English title again for their first time since 1990, I think it would be. But they were up there and pushing. So United went to Anfield just before Christmas, 16th of December. And we won 1-0. Tevez scored just before half-time, again in that majestic black kit. Right in front of the Kop. It was an era when I think Rooney got a 1-0 winner right in front of the Kop and got belted by mobile phones. Just in the months before the season we're talking about now, John O'Shea scored a last-minute winner in front of the Kop. And in December 2007, Carlos Tevez deflected a Rooney shot into the net, and that was a critical win. That
Right.
A draw at Arsenal was fine, but a win at Anfield was majestic.
And celebrated by one Pete Molyneux in the away end. That's your ticket stub from that day, is it not, Pete?
It is, yes, and I was celebrating, and I can't think of a better place to celebrate than Anfield in the away end. And maybe other than outside of any cup final, there is a joy that is hard to put into words for a United supporter seeing Man United score a goal. The joy on the faces of Reds and the misery around you. It's just, I couldn't start to say how great that is, but important that we got that win to sustain momentum, because all through this season, although Chelsea stuttered a bit after they lost Mourinho and Grant came in, they would come back stronger. Arsenal were setting a really good pace. Throughout this season, Chelsea and Arsenal, the previous champions in the previous 3 years, really did set a strong pace. So United had to, could not afford any slips, any runs of draws or losses. It was quite a fast race, and that win at Anfield was critical, I think.
Indeed. Well, should we take a look at the winner, Pete?
Yes.
Low. It's Rooney. Oh, it's in! It's Tevez!
Bit of a, certainly, when you look at the goal, obviously a miss hit by Rooney, and You couple that with what John O'Shea did there the season before off the Ronaldo free kick, and it was spilled, and then a bit of a smash and grab the season before as well. Certainly no sympathies for Liverpool at all, but Tevez, right place, right time, certainly on that one.
Yeah.
Right. So after Liverpool, you touched on some of the big games in that stretch. Pete and Everton, they'd win at Everton or beat Everton at home. They put 4 past Sunderland. They put a rough outing for Tyneside during this stretch. They put 6 past Newcastle a few weeks later as well. They actually put 11 past Newcastle that season, which has to certainly be some sort of record for goals scored against a team in both legs in the league that season, but season. But tremendous. And then they have Portsmouth at home. That was on January 30th. United really starting to roll and tick over now. And a goal for a player that we will touch on a little more in depth at the end of this, in Ronaldo, but a goal that is sort of synonymous with this season and that you see quite a bit in the highlight packages. Bit of a wry smile there from David James after that one flew into the net. He had that almost to say, right, what am I supposed to do with that? Just a tremendously struck goal, that dipping technique that he had where he get underneath the ball, much like we see from Marcus Rashford now, where he gets underneath the ball and puts a topspin on it and just into the corner. So tremendous stuff. I assume you were probably at that game, correct, Pete?
Oh, right at that game and right behind that goal, And of course, it's one of those goals which you knew when you saw it live, whether you were at the ground or on telly, but you saw it in the moment it happened. You thought, oh, that was good. That was good. Not until you see it from all the camera angles do you realise how good it was. And it still stands out today. More players do that now. Not many, because it's only the best that can do it. But you haven't seen much of that. To hit it with such power from that range, but to make it move in the way it did, miss the wall, miss the keeper, but go well under the bar. Just absolute sheer pace and genius. And it got better the more you watched it and the more you saw it from different angles. And it must be said at this time, all the team were playing well. They'd had a fantastic December. I think, December is always packed with games, and United had won most of the games, if not all the games in December. Came to January, kept winning. The old brigade were playing well. The new ones that had come in were playing well in midfield: Anderson, Hargreaves, Tevez. But head and shoulders above even these players that were playing really well was Cristiano Ronaldo. He was coming to a point now where he'd matured. He'd been there 4 years at the club, and he'd gone from man to boy, and he was doing extraordinary things almost every match, and many times within the matches.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll look at a few more of his goals as the season goes on, and at the end of this, look at what he was able to accomplish, because it was certainly a season for the ages in terms of United's history and the great players that we've seen. Right, navigating our way through this stretch then. So that Portsmouth game was on the 30th of January. And then, of course, February 10th, Pete, of 2008, a special, remembering the 50th anniversary of the Munich disaster, and fittingly playing Manchester City, who was also affected, by that with Frank Swift. That disaster. So the city really coming together for that in a game at Old Trafford. Certainly, heavily, very emotional. Certainly for all those involved and all those in attendance, I'm sure. United would ultimately lose the game 2-1. But were you there for this one, Pete? Were you there for the sort of the remembrance, that was taking on, and can you put into context, or even if just in the city, what the emotion was like during that sort of few days.
Yes, I was there, and there'd been an incredible build-up to the game, a very positive build-up, obviously about a very sad subject, but I was born in 1954, so I was only 4 when Munich happened. I didn't know about Manchester United till 63. But once I learned about United and started watching them, following them, I wanted to know everything about them. And the story of the Babes was an incredible tale in itself, how they rose and won 2 titles, English titles, with a team so young, but also so sad because of what happened. People were killed, players were killed. And then a lasting, unfulfilled potential and dream, really, which still lasts to this day, really. Although we did go and win the European Cup in '68 for that team, if you will. But and I thought I'd read everything I could read on Munich. But in that run up to the 50th anniversary in 2008. There were stories in the newspapers and the evening news from people who hadn't spoken out before. And when I say spoken out, I mean told their tales of just what happened on that day, either directly involved or fans at home in Manchester and how they felt and how Manchester was that day and for weeks after. And it was a very parochial thing. Of course, the whole world was shocked. But Manchester United weren't a global team like they are today. It was a dreadful disaster for Manchester, whether you were a City or United supporter. And some of the tales that came out were fascinating to read. But the problem is, if you're reading that for 4 or 5 days on the run, and a lot of people were, we all were, I think it really quelled the passion for the game in a way, and then the sentiment hit the game. And United never really got going on the pitch. Yeah. And as you say, lost. It ended a long run of being undefeated. But it was right to celebrate, as we do each year, and not forget the Babes. And certainly when the anniversaries come round with a nought on the end, there's always more coverage. But I think it was a good thing that some of the stories came out, because some of those people that told the stories wouldn't have been around for a lot longer. So it was very much a double-edged sword. But we lost the game. But then got back into it. But there was something else happening that February that was pertinent to the title, Tim. Arsenal were leading. Arsenal were looking like they were going to win another title under Wenger. And Wenger was good at winning titles and certainly coming on strong in the second half of the season. But they kind of imploded around about the middle of February after a game at Birmingham where they got an injury to Eduardo and they got denied a penalty, I think. And I think their captain, William Gallas, sat out on the pitch at the end of the game almost in tears. And it got a bit of coverage. But Arsenal fell away after that. They won only one of the next 6 games. And I always thought with Arsenal round about this time, whereas Fergie used adversity to drive United on, I kind of let's show them, and if they all hate us, we'll show them, rally round. That was his management technique. Arsene Wenger sometimes could be a little bit like, oh, woe is us, feel sorry for us, this isn't fair for Arsenal. And I wouldn't say necessarily it was a Gallic trait, because that does sound a little bit perhaps unfair. But that's how it felt to me, that it was a little bit of French indignance that sometimes when in the heat of battle let Arsenal down. Many times it didn't. But on that season, 07-08, in the middle of Feb, they did fall away. They did fall away because they felt things weren't going right for them and they let it affect them. Fergie didn't have to play mind games. They played their own negative mind games, I think. Anyway, that's my opinion. And I've shared it with you.
No, you're right. Because after that loss to City, United they sat 5 points back of Arsenal at that time. But then it was at that point, wasn't it, in February when, they really started to, what you just touched on. And United went on this incredible run. So they, it was just what they were able to accomplish sort of, and we'll touch on the run that took place, and that there's sort of like a 34-game stretch there, what they were able to do. But it sort of spoke to the competitiveness of the league, didn't it? Up until February, that 5 points back, United had had done pretty well to that point. And there's after that loss to City, they're 5 points back. Just incredible. But then they would start to fall off, as you said. Right. Also during this point, Pete, so in the season, we're just going to switch gears here. We've talked about the Premier League sort of up to February 10th. During that period as well, just before the flip of the new year into 2008, the Champions League group stage comes to completion on December 12th. And bit of a stroll in the park, and to be honest, for United in this one, 13 goals for, 4 against. They won 5 games. The only one they drew was to Roma. They actually wrapped up the group stage before or finished top before the last game of the group stage. Ronaldo and scored 2 goals against Sporting in the group. Any memories from the group stage? I know, obviously the knockout rounds were to come, and that's where this was sort of just the appetizer to the tasty bit. But anything to add to the Champions League group stage that season?
Well, only that obviously, as any season, Manchester United want to be at the top table. I don't believe we have a right to win the league or a right to win the Champions League, but our history dictates that we should be up there going for it. And for me, the Champions League, the European Cup, will always trump the league because that is the pinnacle of club football. So whenever we're in the Champions League, and the same applies to this season now, and it was great that we hung on there through all the Ollie debacle and Ralph coming in, that we're still in those knockout stages for next year, and anything could happen. But United now needed to come good again in the Champions League, because Fergie had never really built on that 99 team. He tried to, but the early noughties weren't good for him. We got to semis and quarters, but struggled. But he was building this new side domestically, and it was doing well in Europe. I went to Kiev, Tim, when we won 4-1. First time I've been behind. I won't say the Iron Curtain. That's an old phrase. I've been to Poland to watch me in 1980, but I always wanted to go to Russia, funnily enough, and Kiev had been part of Russia till 91. So I got to go to Kiev, to Ukraine, the breadbasket of Russia as it had been, but was now a country in its own right. So I saw that 4-win. It was a great trip to go to Ukraine. It was a smashing city and a great win. And just on the football front, though, if you remember the season before, we'd had that great win over Roma, losing 2-1 away and 7-1 at home. That team just run out of steam when they played Milan in the following round in that previous season. They did all they could to recover the title in the English title. They couldn't do it in Europe as well. So a very good ground in there, 07-08, to get into the group stages.
Yeah, indeed. And so with
get into the knockout stages.
Knockout stage. With United's progression, firmly in place, obviously we shift gears and go back to the Premier League. We'll get into the knockout rounds of the Champions League shortly, but sort of the final stage in the Premier League is in here, the run-in, and you can see that United finished on top ultimately. But lots happened over this stretch for United to get to that point. And certainly it's always more difficult, once you get into the knockout stage of the Champions League, when, squad rotation comes in, you've got the FA Cup games kicking in over this period as well. This is where you really rely heavily on your squad. And when you look at this stretch, Pete, what were certainly some of the games that stand out for you? The 5-1 to Newcastle at home, as we touched on, and obviously Liverpool at home. The 3-0 at Liverpool was a massive one. Were there some other games over that stretch?
We beat Arsenal in that time as well at home, Tim.
Yeah, we did. We beat Arsenal.
We beat Arsenal. But if you look, it did this was in 07-08. It went down to the last game of the season for the first time since 1999. And United had to win at Wigan. Well, I think Chelsea were playing Bolton down in London. If United won, they won it, and they did win. They won it 2-0. I think Chelsea won as well, but United won it, or maybe they drew in the end. No, I think Chelsea drew in the end. But we only won it by 2 points after all that. And so, as I was saying earlier, all the way through, and Arsenal were only 4 points behind. Chelsea and Arsenal put in a real good, solid run. But there's a stat towards the bottom there, Tim. You've said 26 wins in 31 games. After that first 3 games start, where they were stuttering a bit, right to when the last 4 games, in those 30 games, they won 31 games, 26 wins. It was the relentlessness of winning games home and away.
Incredible run
against the good teams, the average teams, and the relegation teams. Consistency was the key. We scored the highest number of goals, with the highest scorers in the Premier League, and we had the best defence. So it was a brilliant all-round team, an all-round campaign in the league. And what was United always they are not just the cake, they are not just cream on the cake. There's always a cherry on the cake in our good seasons. So Ryan Giggs there at Wigan scored the second goal to make it 2-0 with about 12 minutes to go, and then it was over. It was over. There was thousands of Reds locked out that went ticketless. I was in the Wigan end. I'd paid £100 for my ticket, which the most I've ever paid for a ticket. Believe me, that ended up going cheap. I'd turned it down at £100 at the start of the week and went crawling back to the lady and said, "Go on, then I'll buy it now," because I realised that they were gold dust. So I was in there to witness it. Ryan Giggs, when he scored that winning goal, clinched the title for United. He also was equaling Bobby Charlton's record appearance for United with his 758th appearance. And therefore, just in all that winning the league and then going on to the Champions League, we shouldn't forget Giggsy, because his contribution throughout to United's history is superb and over such a long period. And a few seasons before thought he was past it, and he wasn't. He delivered that crown at Wigan, and United won the league for the 17th time, beating our own record of 16. We won the English League title for the 17th time ever at Wigan. Superb.
Indeed. Well, let's get into a couple of games here. So Liverpool, March 23rd at home. United go on to win 3-0. Let's look at Nanny's goal.
At Old Trafford, we expected it to be close. It's not. 3-0. Well,
and Pete backflipping in the stands when he scored that goal, I'm sure, were you, as Nanny was backflipping on the pitch. Tremendous strike from Nanny.
I wasn't backflipping, Tim. On the grounds that I wanted to see the remaining games and not be on my back in hospital. But I shared his elation. That clip again just shows one thing: the directness of United when they're at the best, in their best seasons, and this was one of the best seasons ever. The power and the pace that we go forward with, is breathtaking. And when people say, "Oh, I don't know what is the United way," I don't know what it is. Is it a real thing? It is a real thing, and that goal demonstrates it. It's power and pace going forward, and you bamboozle the defenders are twisting one way and another because they don't know where these players are going with their interplay. And it's a marked difference to what we've had served up over some of the last couple of years, where it's been very slow going forward, albeit sometimes under Ollie, sometimes under Mourinho, definitely under Van Gaal. That slow build-up where it's going back, and the winger or the full-back stops and checks and does that. For us to return to this sort of season that we're talking about now, Tim, Ralph Rangnick needs to get United playing like that again. Because that's what the Old Trafford crowd expect, whether we win the title or not, or the Champions League. But also because it is so effective. That's
so overwhelming, isn't it? We just overwhelm teams.
Yeah, and that's been in our DNA since the Second World War. Not every season and not every minute of every game, but anyway, the power and the pace of going forward. Rooney, Ronaldo, Nani, Tevez. Defenders couldn't live with them. When it got to about the last 10 minutes, they were punch drunk in that season. A lot of the defenders.
Yeah, incredible. And Pete, when you look at that stretch, so January 5th, we're going to talk about the FA Cup in a minute. But from January 5th onward, we scored. Sorry, give me a second here. I lost my train of thought. Sorry, from March. Sorry, from March 8th, after the loss in the FA Cup to Portsmouth, we scored 10 goals in 4 games in the Premier League. 1-0 at Derby, 2-0 at Bolton, 3-0 at home to Liverpool, and 4-0 against Villa. Just an incredible stretch there in the run-in. And then in April, where again the games are coming thick and fast. We had 8 games that month, and that's the time of the season when you really have to find a way to grind out results and pick up points. And of course, April 19th, we go away to Blackburn, and chasing the game 1-0, and Carlos Tevez popped up with this.
Save of the season from Friedel. And it comes, scores! Tevez! Manchester United do it! They are out of jail! 3 minutes from time!
You talked about some of the crucial goals that he popped up with this season. I think he scored 19 goals that season, but some of them were just incredibly massive goals. That being one of the biggest. I think he equalized against Spurs that season late as well. In the 90th minute, there was an equalizer from him earlier. But just an incredible. It's that point in the season where those are the games that you've got to pick up points in, isn't it? Because you just don't know how massive and crucial they could be towards the end.
Oh, we were 1-0 down, and the pain you felt as we're going into that last 10 minutes, we needed to pull something out of the bag. And at the points like that, you need top players to do something special. If you look at the way Tevez twisted his body to get that header, he didn't run onto it. He had to kind of go back and then twist his neck and his head and his shoulders round, and then to direct it towards goal with such accuracy in a kind of nanosecond. It's top class stuff. Like Giggs's cross with his left foot, like Ronaldo's dipping shots at speed, like Rooney going forward and Nani with their directness. We were being served up top class football, entertaining football, and you never knew what was going to happen. It was tremendous.
Yeah, absolutely. And with the game that was coming up in the league just after that, so we had Chelsea away, sandwiched in between the 2 Barcelona ties in the Champions League, which we'll get into. That draw meant that going to Chelsea, we maintained a 3-point lead, so that even if we were to lose away at Chelsea, we still remain top of the league on goal difference, with some big games coming up. So in terms of the context of where that left United, it was such a massive goal. So United go away to Chelsea, and Pete, you were at that game as well, weren't you?
Yeah. We could have won it. We could have won it that day, Tim. If we'd have won it, we'd have had a 6-point lead.
Right.
With 2 games left, and we had a far better goal difference. So we could have clinched the title that day. We went down to London hoping we'd see United, be crowned not crowned champions, but put it beyond reasonable doubt. But Chelsea was strong on that day. Avram Grant had got Chelsea playing very well, especially around Michael Ballack in midfield.
When you look at that game, Pete, so we had Barcelona on April 23rd, and then we had Chelsea on the 26th, so sort of 3 days later. And then Barcelona coming back to United for the return leg, which we'll look at in just a little bit here, on the 29th. So that Chelsea, that crucial league game sandwiched in between a Champions League semifinal against one of Europe's biggest clubs. It was always going to be a tricky one, wasn't it? And not surprising that maybe United just lacked that little bit of sharpness on that day. Yeah,
on the day, actually, Rooney got injured. I think he hurt his hamstring or his calf, and he struggled. He might have got the knock before the game, and he pulled up in the game. He got substituted, As you rightly say, it was in between the semi-finals. Ronaldo was on the bench. Fergie rested 4 of his players. Can you imagine it? Rested 4 of his players, thinking saving them for Barcelona. He was banking on trying to win the European Cup, but also thinking, well, if I can get a draw at Chelsea, that'll do. That'll really do it. So it was tricky. But at that end of the season, when Manchester United are being Manchester United, it's both giddy, it's scary, it's exciting. You don't know whether to take a Mogadom to calm down or just go with the flow, because it's going Saturday, Wednesday. It might vary a bit now between Tuesdays and Thursdays and all that, but midweek and weekend, you're playing top critical games, but that's what we wanted to be. So, Chelsea, we could have won the league that day, but our minds, I guess at the time, were partly on that we'd got a draw in Barcelona 3 days before, and we were playing them again a few days after that Chelsea game. So, critical part of the season.
Breakneck speed. And so Chelsea win that game. They're level on points and 81 points. The next game against West Ham, United win that one 4-1. Chelsea also beating Newcastle in that match week. So we go into the last game of the season with both teams, Chelsea and United, fighting for the title, sitting on 84 points, knowing by this point that they're going to be playing each other in the Champions League final as well. Chelsea at Bolton, they draw to Bolton at home. All United had to do coming into the game, regardless of the Chelsea draw, was because their goal difference was so superior, was to win at Wigan. And you touched on Ryan Giggs.
Home, Manchester United surely have retained their Premier League crown. There could not be a more fitting goal scorer. It's game number 758 for Manchester United, equaling Sir Bobby Charlton's record. How coolly did he take that chance?
I thought I saw you backflip there in the away end, Pete, but I could be mistaken. But
no, by that stage, I decided to backflip him. That was worth £100 of anybody's money. It was a courtesy ticket I got, actually. So it was from a Wigan fan, but a lot of Wigan fans for that last game had decided to just cash in and sell the tickets. Anyway, I paid £100. And when you see that goal of Giggs is going in, that £100 was well spent.
Indeed. So United, job done in the league. Still chasing the treble. Like we said, we'll get to the Champions League. They've got Chelsea in the Champions League final. We switch gears to the FA Cup, which took place during this stretch as well, from January 5th to completed on March 8th. Victorious away to Villa in the third round, beat Spurs at home 3-1, beat Arsenal at home 4-0, and Portsmouth comes to Old Trafford in round 6 with a chance for United to move on to the semi-final of the FA Cup. Let's take a look at this. Is one of those games, Pete, that you look back on and you just think, what if?
Rooney found Ronaldo magnificently. Cristiano Ronaldo here. Good covering by Distant. It's a very good decision for me by the referee, Martin Atkinson. It was a wonderful United break. Ronaldo was magnificently found by Rooney and simply tore away from Heriderson. Here's Wayne Rooney. David James in real problems now. Rooney, Campbell covers. Tevez is there, off the line. Of the hour mark, Nani's corner. Vidic, Tevez blocked it on the line, and they can't scramble it in, can they? They can't. Portsmouth have got it away to Ronaldo. Rooney might open up here. Patrice Evra in on goal, behind Tevez. Nani. Still Nani. Ronaldo over the bar. Tarka lost out to Carrick. Cristiano Ronaldo. Carrick onside, and it's going to go in, is it? It's a scrappy one, and it's off the line. Two went for it. It's come to Evra off the post. My goodness me, they've missed another one. Even the post conspires against them. Nani. Oh, and it's away by Campbell, just as Cristiano Ronaldo was ready to put it in the net.
Takes. And it's Nico Kranjčar, and Baroš is square if Kranjčar can find him. It's Baroš for Portsmouth. He's brought down. It's a penalty kick, and it may well be a red card. It is. Kušak is sent off. Manchester United haven't got another keeper because Kušak was the sub-keeper, and Portsmouth have a penalty. Oh, did Baroš leave his leg in and make sure it made contact with the keeper? Rio Ferdinand, the captain, will put on the shirt and put on the gloves. Montari scores! Ferdinand went the right way, but Manchester United are behind. And it's Portsmouth into the FA Cup semi-final. And the treble has gone for Manchester United.
So the dream ends, Pete, with defeat to Portsmouth at home. You know, I remember watching that game live thinking, how have we not scored in this game? We absolutely battered them. Just chance after chance after chance. Carrick, I mean, just had to bundle the ball in the net, ever at the post. It was just, and then, so dubious penalty call. It was, you know, the United fans will claim that Ronaldo should have had a penalty in the start of the game. They'll claim that Milan Baroš went over too easily to get his penalty. Lots of controversy. People look back at Martin Atkinson in that game and think maybe, you know, one or two decisions that didn't go United's way, but ended the treble dream, and it was just one of those games, wasn't it?
Well, it was. And just looking at it back there, it brought back, well, painful memories. Looking at it, I think the police should still perhaps might open it as a cold case. It was one of the worst cases of robbery I've ever seen. It comes under that category of we were probably never going to score that day. There was Carrick's and a couple of other attempts there that there's only so far you can go towards scoring without it actually going in the net. It was so close to scoring, you know, it's almost impossible for it not to go in. So it just wasn't meant to be. Strong feeling of robbery because of the penalty claims. And when you look back, you say, yes, that stopped us winning the treble. Of course, at the time, we weren't even in the semi-finals of the Champions League. So as it's going along, you don't always know how it's going to map out. But really, it was a game we should have won. And given that in the other two competitions, we went on to win them strongly, we'd have probably gone on to win the FA Cup as well and do a second treble. Credit to Portsmouth, they went on and won the cup under Harry Redknapp. So
destiny year for them, wasn't it?
In the cup's all about that. But it wasn't to be. But we got the two bigger jewels in the crown.
Right. And speaking of the second jewel, we'll head into the last phase of our show here in terms of the Champions League group stage. So as we saw, United win the league, out of the cup in the sixth round to Portsmouth, cruised through their group in the Champions League and into the knockout rounds. And some tricky ties in this one, Pete. Lyon away, Tevez had to score late to equalize that one. So that was a tricky tie. The 3-0 scoreline will indicate that maybe Roma was a bit more comfortable than some of the other games in this stage. But United's history in Italy has been spotty at times in terms of what they're able to do in Italy itself. So to go away and get that 2-0 away was a mega performance for United. And then into the semifinal against Barcelona, and we touched on how those legs, sandwiched in between that was the Chelsea game. What was the build-up like to the Barcelona game and the massive week that was coming ahead at that time for United with Barcelona and Chelsea?
Well, it was really exciting. I mean, obviously, to play Barcelona in the semi-final of the Champions League, it's part of what you want when you're a kid, to see your team play at home to one of the best teams in Europe and to go and visit one of the cathedrals of European football. So we went away there with a really good following, and we're frustrated a bit, really. We missed a penalty early on. Ronaldo missed a penalty. And then really both these very attractive teams played out the rest of it a 0-0 draw. You've got to put it in context now. You were in a golden period of Manchester United's history. I say Fergie's, his third great team, I'd say now. But also Barca were building again. They'd won it in 2006, hadn't they, when they beat Arsenal. They would go on. They got to the semi-final this season. And then, of course, they would build under Pep to win those 2011 games and 2013. So, 09 and 2011. So Barcelona were coming to the boil. So you had two giants playing it out. Strange to get a 0-0 draw over there. Strange in that two great teams, neither would score. But also strange because when you get back to Old Trafford, you've not got an away goal. But that night, the atmosphere at Old Trafford for the second leg, it was the first time I think they used that Believe mosaic, which did work, you might say, because we won the tie.
Yeah.
The atmosphere though was tremendous. The support behind the team from before the kickoff, but right through the whole of that 90-odd minutes was second to none all around the ground. And Scholesy won it with an opportunist goal, if you will, a speculative strike, but a very good strike. But then after that, you want the match to end after the 14th minute or 15th minute when you go 1-0 ahead. So you're counting down the clock for 75 minutes. By the last 10 minutes, if not the last 15 minutes, everybody's nails were probably down to the knuckles because it was so tense. United were going forward and could have scored, but we actually dug in at home. I wouldn't say we played negatively, but we certainly put it really, really dug in to stop Barca scoring. Because if they'd have got one, we'd have had to go on and score three. So, but it's a chance you take that because you can let the opposition come onto you and they're a very good opposition. But it must have been the longest 75 minutes I've ever experienced at Old Trafford. It went on and on and on. And you were drained at the end of it, ecstatic once you realised the final whistle went, but absolutely drained to a man, to a woman, to, no matter how long you'd followed the club, it meant so much. And when that final whistle went and you knew we were in another Champions League final, and they don't come round that often, Tim,
I can't think of another game where you felt that release from United supporters at the end, because you touched on just how one goal, and as you get later in the game, there's going to be not enough time for United to respond to it because we'd have to go get another one. You touched on the emotion at the end of that game, and you could just hear the eruption.
Oh, you could touch it, you could smell it, you could feel it. Just one thing, that goalkeeper coming up at the end was Victor Valdez. But Barcelona threw everything at us. We'd gone to two previous European Cup finals in '68 and '99, but we got through by winning by playing the second leg away. So the 3-3 in Madrid, a tremendous comeback in Madrid in '68 to go through. I wasn't there. I was watching that very grainy black and white TV set. '99, I was there for Turin, and that was tremendous to win there in the Stadio dell'Alpi and get through to a final. But we'd never done it by getting through at Old Trafford. So it was something very, very different because you had 70,000 people. Nerves shredded but joyous to the nth degree, and it was something special to get through by playing that second leg at Old Trafford. It was markedly different. But the overriding thing was we were in our third European Cup final, and it was in Moscow, Tim. So when I was a young lad, I dreamed about going to see United play in Europe, and in the end, my first away game was in Ostend. It wasn't a cup game, it was just a friendly. But I'd been to Europe to see United. Ostend is about the nearest, the least far place you could go from England to see a game abroad. But I went and I'd ticked that box. Going to far-flung places was something I wanted to do. And I'd been lucky enough by this stage, 2008, to get to go to Poland to see them play, and Kiev, and I'd been to Istanbul and many other places, Romania. But to go to Moscow was something else as a person and as a fan.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a dream, because Moscow is an incredible capital in many ways. But to play a game there,
Mm-hmm.
what was bizarre was we were going 1,600 miles to Moscow to watch United and Chelsea. So that felt a bit odd, but
Yeah.
So be it. And overnight, the prices doubled and trebled for hotels and flights. So
I'm sure.
If anybody's thinking, God, he paid 100 quid for that Wigan ticket, I won't tell you how much I paid to get to Moscow. But again, it was worth it.
Certainly, I'm sure it was, Pete. And into the final against Chelsea, beating them out for the league. So looking for the double now, and into the final we go.
Thinking back on that, and here's Brown for Ronaldo. There again. Rooney fired across to Tevez, who's taken by surprise. What a fair goal has changed that. Here's Essien. Oh, and it might run here, and it has. As Drogba lost his footing and then shoots. There goes the whistle. The goals came in the first half from Cristiano Ronaldo. 11. The referee's not going to wait for the substitutions. Ballack, Lampard turns, hits the bar. It's in the Champions League for Chelsea. Has the chance to win the Champions League for Chelsea. And the Sar's save. They've been driven on by memories of Munich 50 years ago. A celebration of the 40th anniversary there for John Terry with a swing of his right foot.
Tremendous scenes, and one of my favorite pictures from that night, I just have it up there, was this one, this raw emotion. But you know, it's remarkable. We've won 3 European Cup and 2 Champions Leagues. Obviously, we've had other successes in Europe, but in the prime competition, you know, we won it in 1968. You touched on the semifinal in Madrid. It was Bill Folks who popped up with the, you know, obviously Munich survivor was Bill Folks, who popped up with the goal to put us ahead in that one on goals. So you know, that was tremendous on aggregate. And then, you know, the 99 in the Champions League final, we won it on Sir Matt Busby's birthday. And then now this one, and the 50th anniversary of Munich, to win this one, it's just fitting with a club of this nature. And it just, you know, you talked about the United way and how we want to play football, but when you look at the overall history of this club, it's just these big moments, 3 big moments in our club's history, 3 of the biggest, that are sprinkled with sort of, you know, stardust from this terrible, terrible tragedy. For me, it just sort of came full circle that night at the Luzhniki Stadium.
Yeah, there'll always be the link with Munich, I think. Anyway, and I make the link more with the pioneering vision that Busby had to take United into the European Cup as it was in 1956. That and United, after, from that point, being the first English club ever to go in and then to do so well, will be our history is inextricably linked with playing European football. Busby didn't take them just on a jolly. He took them there because he wanted to pit the finest players he'd assembled, not just against the English teams, but against the best in Europe. You know, the Real Madrid, who were a fine side then, the Hungarians. He wanted to pit his Manchester lads, or lads from all around the Great Britain who'd become adopted Mancs. He wanted to pit them against the best in Europe. And he did. He was brave enough to do that. And that's the pioneering spirit that I think is very much in United's DNA. The fact it did 2 years later end in such tragedy kind of magnifies that even more, because there was a dream there and the dream was shattered. So anything we ever do, we don't win our European Cups just because of the Busby Babes.
No.
But they without that starting point, without that foundation, we may never have risen to such heights. And I say this now not to put Manchester City down. I could spend an hour talking City down, but I don't think City have ever got that European Cup Champions League thing. I don't mean that they never won it. We all know that. And they will, you know, as more money's pumped in. But they have never bought in their fans or the club, I don't think, to the importance of European matches and your team playing at the highest possible level. And therefore, a lot of their games for the last 20 years, and certainly the last 10 when they've got regularly in the Champions League, they're not sold out. There are so many open spaces. So I know we always have a dig at City about the space on the terraces when they play in Europe, but they never ever grasped it. Whereas when Manchester United first went into Europe, the crowds turned up in droves. Ironically, those home fans turned up at Main Road to watch them because the European Cup games weren't played in the 50s at Old Trafford because we didn't have floodlights. City got floodlights before us.
Yeah,
We got it. It was packed out at Main Road for the games against Borussia Dortmund and Anderlecht and so on, and Bilbao. And so that is inextricably linked with Manchester United. It's in the fabric. And on that third victory, which turned out to be our last victory to date in winning the European Cup, the Champions League, it was as sweet as the other two, and as tense as the other two. And
indeed.
What's odd is in those 3 European Cup wins as well, you've linked them to the Munich connection. There's another connection though that we won three of them, but we didn't win any of them within 90 minutes.
Another good point. Yeah,
we went to extra time in 68, and we went to about the 93rd minute in 99. And we went to extra time and penalties. And I remember when I was going to Moscow, and I knew it'd be well. I've since seen 2 defeats in the Champions League, those 2 to Barcelona. And there is such a marked difference between how you are as a fan at that match and the memories of it as time goes on till you take your last breath, between winning it and losing it. When you win it, the high is the emotion is something that if you could bottle it, it'd be worth millions of pounds, and it will live with you forever. When you lose it, you just want to get back on the coach, get home and forget it. I've never watched the highlights from Rome in 2009. I've never watched the highlights from Wembley in 2011. But I regularly
you don't want to see it.
Sheringham's goals and John Terry's penalty miss and Bestie's goal to dance around the keeper in 68.
Yeah.
So it's such a pinnacle to win the European Cup. I think for any fan, for any team, it is the highest thing to do. And I did wonder going to Moscow, could it equal Barcelona in 99 and Wembley in 68? I was lucky enough to see both of them. And in the end, it did, because the drama to go to penalties, the drama that John Terry could have won it and it not happen down to a penalty shootout. Well, again, drama of the highest drama in the most important game your club can play. So
indeed,
it was tremendous to win it. But Chelsea really came back at us in that game. I thought we started well.
We did. We saw some of the clips there with Tevez.
In the middle of the game where they were very, very strong, I thought, Tim, and it was tough, but we rode it,
Yeah, certainly.
Night, Tim?
I was in Toronto with about so Toronto is about an hour and a half away from me, home of the official United Supporters Club here in Canada, and I was in a pub with about 200 to 300 other United supporters. Stood on a chair so I could see the TV over the crowd, and I remember when Van der Sar saved the penalty. The place went nuts. Someone kicked out the chair from under me by mistake, and I ended up falling on the floor. Got up, lifted myself off the floor, and went absolutely mental. So it was a memorable night for me too. And you touched on sort of, United came out of the traps flying in that game. We saw the Ronaldo goal. There was a couple chances on the counter where they had to go ahead and probably should have gone ahead by an even greater margin. And then Lampard equalized just before halftime, and that really spurred Chelsea into the game, you felt, and gave them a new lease on life. And the rest is history, with the penalty save. But United go on to win the double, one short of the treble. But you look at Pete, some of the individual performances that season too, and there's one in particular that we need to look at before we go. We know we're well over the hour mark, folks, but United aren't playing. It's a tremendous season, and we'll be finished shortly, but we're we just got one more thing to look at. You look at the top there, our front three there, and what they were able to accomplish that season. Just a tremendous haul, 79 goals between the three of them. But one in particular, Pete, you look there on the far right, what Ronaldo was able to do with 42 goals in 49 appearances. You look at some of the individual performances that we've had in our great history. Double winner, Ballon d'Or winner. We've had other Ballon d'Or winners, but in the context of this season, 31 goals in the Premier League that season, the Golden Boot winner, PFA Player of the Year. You put that alongside some of the other tremendous seasons we had from players, Dennis Law with his 46 goals in all competitions in the 63-64 season, Dennis Violet in a season that we looked at. If you haven't seen our episode on the 59-60 season, folks, you can find it on our Twitter page. Take a look. But Dennis Violet's 32 goals in the league season still stands as the record for most league goals in the season. It was one that Ronaldo was chasing. I don't think that record's been broken. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I believe that record still stands. But regardless, tremendous individual season in the context of the history of this club. He was just terrific, wasn't he?
He was. And Dennis Violet's record still stands, 32 league goals in a season. I think Ronaldo did he get 30 or 31 league goals?
He got 31 league goals that season, so he was chasing it to Philip short.
Right, one off the United all-time record from 1878, so tremendous. Yeah. But 42 goals in 46 appearances in modern day football is tremendous, and it's an understatement to say tremendous. But he was a talisman that year, and it showed the brilliance that the players and Fergie, when they saw this young lad playing in Sporting Lisbon against United at friendly, they could see that potential and then nurtured that potential. Not every potential comes to fruition, but he was loved at Old Trafford. We know that, Ronaldo, first time round. When he went, we wished him luck. We just wish he could have stayed longer. But he'd given us so much, we could never feel bad about him. We'll see how part two pans out. I'm glad he's back. He can't be the player he was then because of age, but he's still very good. But what the things he was doing that season, week in, week out, his pace, his dribbling skills, his heading ability, that header in the final, the way he just kind of nods it, but it's from about 18 yards out, and he places it well wide at such speed from the goalie. But so many skills, free kicks,
difficult to generate the pace. The
goals
on that
he made as well, Tim.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's a difficult pace. And the ball was coming in.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And the goals he made as well, the assists, tremendous. But let's not forget a couple of the other guys you put in there. Wayne Rooney, of course, was in the middle of all this. A guy that'll get more hero status as time goes on. He the way he led United on was superb through that first decade from him coming in 2003 right up to when he left. Tevez, he didn't stay so long, but he contributed. That team, we've got up to 2008 there, Tim, and I think 2007 to 2009 was the best team United have ever had, I'd say. The Babes couldn't go to fruition. The best Lauren Charlton era was superb, but we became the first English team to win the World Club Championship in December of the year we've just covered, 2008, Tim. United became the first English club to become World Club champions. Sorry, they did it for the second time in 08. We'd done it in 1999. So you might say the treble team was better, but I think that 08-09 team really had something. Really probably did it for 2 years more intensely than the treble winning team. But it's fine lines. I wouldn't start a fight with anybody that says the 68 team was better or the 56 team was better. We're just blessed to have seen any of them.
In terms of attacking trio, Pete, I mean, you look at Tevez, Ronaldo, Rooney, and then Bestlaw, Charlton. Certainly in our history, I think you put those two up against each other as just two of, well, easily the two top three in terms of an attacking trio across the the front line there. The 99 team, like you touched upon, front fine margins. We could have easily won the treble this season. But before we go and give our final words, let's just take a couple more goals of the brilliance of Ronnie.
Ronaldo showing interest, and a mistake from Kedru, and Cristiano Ronaldo will put.
When this ball drops in here, you don't get that time and space, and certainly not when you've got somebody as quick and as talented as Ronaldo.
Create here, but he finds Ronaldo. Ronaldo onto his left foot. Ronaldo! Oh! Is there anything this man can't do? What a stunning goal from Cristiano Ronaldo. It's his 15th of the season. The man who's the third best. Wonderful football. Ronaldo's in the centre if Giggs can find him. Ronaldo's there! Oh, he's done it again! What a move that is. Giggs with the cross, and Ronaldo inevitably with the finish. His 18th of the season. He simply cannot stop scoring. So many memorable moments this season. What can he do now? Ronaldo! Oh, he's extraordinary. Special goal, special player. 2-0 United.
So a couple more goals there, Pete. And the other thing you touched upon, we saw when I put that compilation together with his head, left foot, right foot, running at people, and just the arrogance and the cheek to try anything. I mean, you think back to the following season that I believe it was the 08-09 season, the semifinal in the Champions League against Arsenal, where we had that 45-yard free kick. And the commentator saying, well, it's too long out for him, isn't it? And what does he do? He just steps up and just smashes it. So it's just that confidence to try absolutely anything. And it was on display this season. So tremendous season from Ronnie. We know we've gone well over the hour. We're finishing up here, just an hour and a half, but so much to cover. Pete, what are your final words or final memories on this season before we leave here?
Well, I think we've seen, as well as said, that there's some superb results and performances on the big stage. The hardest domestic league in the world, the Premier League. It was then, it is still. United won it not comfortably, but by outpacing two other good thoroughbred racehorses, and conquered Europe with teams like Barcelona and Roma and all the others that are there, playing excellent football, entertaining crowds home and away. A lot of Ronnie's goals there were away from home, Tim, and the abuse he used to get was horrific, but he thrived on it. Yep. So going home and away, playing attractive football, it was trademark Manchester United, and that season will live long in the memory because of what we won, the way we won it.
Absolutely. Well said, Pete, to finish off the show. Folks, we hope you enjoyed that. Obviously, Christmas and the holiday season's upon us, so this will be our last episode before the new year. Pete, a happy holiday season and a happy new year to you and to everybody watching. If you want to rewatch this episode, folks, you can, if you go to my Twitter handle here, or the Twitter handle for the podcast, in our description is the link that you can click on to get to all the episodes. We have them all listed there for you. So please, we encourage you to check out some of the other episodes as well. We enjoy doing them. We hope you enjoy them. And we will see you in the new year.
Yep. All the best, everybody. Merry Christmas, a safe Christmas, a happy Christmas. For those that are celebrating Christmas and those that aren't, we still wish you all the best.